Hi everyone, Courtney Moskell here, a registered dietitian and a corporate well-being consultant at Welsh Duffield. Let's face it, now more than ever, we are dealing with different types of stress. We've all been facing so many changes and stresses in our lives, and sometimes it's difficult to navigate these new territories and emotions. A little stress in your life is normal and even sometimes beneficial, but it certainly shouldn't be your permanent state of mind. Let's discuss how we can recognize stress and their effects on our health, and we'll get into what foods we can incorporate into our eating plan that can actually help to curb these feelings of being stressed out. Let's begin by discussing what our goals are for this discussion. We want to understand what the main stressors of our lives and their root cause. How can we recognize the signs of stress and possibly mitigate the effects of stress before they really come to a head? We'll describe the short and long-term effects of stress on your body and your mind. Some people turn to food as a coping mechanism to try to relieve stress, and that's called emotional eating. We'll chat about tips to help halt emotional eating, fight your cravings, and identify your triggers, and find more satisfying ways to feed your feelings. Furthermore, we'll talk about mindful eating to help gain control over your eating habits. This eating technique has been shown to promote weight loss, reduce binge eating, and helps you to feel better. Lastly, we'll get into the foods that you can incorporate into your eating that can actually help to soothe stress. Certain foods can correct stress-triggered body imbalances while helping you stress less. Overall, research shows that people who eat a diet rich in fresh fruit and veggies, whole grains, and lean proteins are less depressed and less anxious than those eating a diet in processed foods. Easier said than done, I completely understand, so I'm here to help you navigate ways to realistically implement these recommendations into your life. Being stuck in a traffic jam, meeting deadlines, juggling family and social commitments, your finances, and even watching the news, these are all common stressors. A little stress in your life is normal, and like we said, sometimes beneficial. It really should not be your permanent state of mind. Understanding the types and sources of stress, short-term and long-term, internal and external, it's an important part of stress management. So what is stress? Stress is your body's reaction to the demands of the world. Stressors are events or conditions in your surroundings that may trigger stress. Your body responds to stressors differently depending on whether the stressor is new or short-term, which is acute stress, or whether the stressor has been around for a longer time, which is considered chronic stress. So diving in a little deeper here. Acute stress. This is also known as the fight or flight response. Acute stress is your body's immediate reaction to a perceived threat, challenge, or scare. The acute stress response is immediate and intense, and in certain circumstances can actually be thrilling. Examples of acute stressors include having a job interview or getting a speeding ticket. A single episode of acute stress generally does not cause problems for healthy people. However, severe acute stress can cause mental health problems such as post-traumatic stress disorder. It can also cause physical difficulties such as a tension headache, stomach problems, or serious health issues such as a heart attack. Mild acute stress can actually be beneficial. It can spur you into action, it can motivate you and energize you. The problem occurs when stressors pile up and they stick around. This persistent stress can lead to a health problem, such as headaches or insomnia. The chronic stress response is more subtle than is the acute stress response, but the effects may be longer lasting and possibly more problematic. We've had quite a year, and our stressors have shifted as we've been living through some unique and very scary times due to the pandemic. According to the American Psychological Association, or the APA, 83% of Americans from all political parties reported being stressed out about the future. About 78% say that the coronavirus pandemic is a significant source of stress. This includes many parents that are worried about the impact the pandemic has on their child's development, as well as families that are unable to physically spend time with one another, and the mental toll that's taking on everyone. Financial stress, work stress, and relationships are other stressors that have been magnified over the course of this year. So now let's discuss the stress response. Your body is hardwired to react to stress in ways meant to protect you against threats from predators and other aggressors. As you undoubtedly face multiple demands each day, such as taking on a huge workload, paying the bills, and taking care of your family, your body treats these so-called minor hassles as threats. As a result, you may feel as if you're under constant attack. When you encounter a perceived threat, so maybe this is a dog barking at you during your morning walk, your hypothalamus, which is a tiny region at your brain's base, it sets off an alarm system in your body. Through a combination of nerve and hormonal signals, the system prompts your adrenal glands, which is located atop your kidneys, to release a surge of hormones, including adrenaline and cortisol. Adrenaline increases your heart rate, elevates your blood pressure, and boosts energy supplies. Cortisol, which is the primary stress hormone, it increases glucose in the bloodstream, enhances your brain's use of glucose, and increases the availability of substances that repair tissues. Cortisol also curbs functions that would actually be non-essential or even detrimental in a fight or flight situation. It alters immune system responses and suppresses the digestive system, the reproductive system, and growth processes. This complex natural alarm system also communicates with the brain regions that control mood, motivation, and fear. The body's stress response system is usually self-limiting, so once a perceived threat has passed, your hormone levels return to normal. As adrenaline and cortisol levels drop, your heart rate and blood pressure return to those baseline levels, and other systems resume their regular activities. But when those stressors are always present and you constantly feel under attack, that fight or flight reaction stays turned on. The long-term activation of the stress response system and the overexposure to cortisol and other stress hormones that follows can really disrupt almost all of your body's processes. Over the years, researchers have learned not only how and why these reactions occur, but have also gained insight into the long-term effects that chronic stress has on physical and psychological health. Over time, repeated activation of the stress response takes a toll on your body. Research suggests that chronic stress contributes to high blood pressure, promotes the formation of artery clogging deposits, and cause brain changes that may actually contribute to anxiety, depression, and addiction. More preliminary research suggests that chronic stress may also contribute to obesity, both through direct mechanisms, causing people to eat more, or indirectly, decreasing sleep and exercise. That's why it's so important to learn healthy ways to cope with your life stressors. As mentioned, little stress every now and then is not something to be concerned about. It's that ongoing chronic stress that can cause or exacerbate many serious health problems, which can negatively affect your whole body. The brain is affected, and that stress can cause difficulty concentrating. You might experience mind fog or mental health problems such as depression and anxiety. Your cardiovascular system is compromised. It can lead to heart disease, high blood pressure, abnormal heart rhythms, heart attacks, and stroke. It can also cause obesity and disordered eating. Some experience menstrual problems or decreased hormone production in the reproductive system. One's immune function could also be decreased and cause lowered immune defenses, which can actually increase your recovery time. You might experience muscle tightness, aches, inflammation. Those are some more physical effects stemming from chronic stress. Skin and hair problems such as acne, eczema. Some people have permanent hair loss or other physical reactions, and also some GI problems such as gastritis, ulcerative colitis, and IBS. While short-term stress can lead to bothersome headaches, stomach cramps, weight gain, and more bouts of colds and flu, it's the chronic incessant stress that impacts every part of your body, from your digestive and reproductive systems to your immune system. Stress is part of life. What matters most is how you handle it. The best thing you can do to prevent stress overload and the health consequences that come with it is to know your stress symptoms. Now that you have a reasonable understanding about what stress is, we'll discuss common unhealthy coping mechanisms and how we can adjust these pitfalls. One of the main issues with stress is that it can cause unhealthy eating habits. This applies to people who are always on the go. People that fall into this category often endure large amounts of stress and have no time to fit a balanced nutrition around their busy schedule. Additionally, stress makes the body crave foods that are high in fats and sugars. This flaw in eating in time will inflict a greater stress on the body, plus other problems that pose a threat to your physical and mental health. It might seem enticing to grab food from a fast food restaurant after work as it's so easy and quick. These energy-dense foods provide a combination of high calories, sugar, and fat, which would add to your stress and to weight gain. Fast food is usually richer and results in instant gratification. Stress can also have the effect of making people skip or completely forget to eat their meals. Some stress hormones, such as CRF or corticotropin releasing factor, suppress your appetite by altering the digestive system and decrease the sense of hunger. Individuals with persistent stress or those affected by generalized anxiety may be more likely to have chronic elevations of these hormones, resulting in prolonged appetite suppression. Actually, the same person can react differently to stress depending on the type or the seriousness of the particular situation. You might eat more when mildly stressed, like during final exams, but you could lose your appetite altogether during a different type of stressful situation. It's not fully understood why this happens, but it's likely related to the amount of stress hormones that are secreted in that moment and how heavily they're influencing the hunger center. When under a lot of stress, people often burn the candle at both ends to try to make ends meet. When they attempt this, they normally use coffee or other stimulants to assist them. There's nothing wrong with a few cups of coffee or tea, but try to have them earlier in the day and skip it after noon as it can interfere with your sleep. Beverages such as caffeinated coffee or tea can help improve mental focus when taken in small amounts, but drinking too much may have an unintended effect. Too much caffeine can make you feel anxious, jittery, and more stressed than you actually are. Many fad diets lead people to focus obsessively on food. Extreme eating plans tend to require a dietary transformation. From the grapefruit diet to the cabbage soup plan, fads are largely inflexible, and participants have to take extraordinary measures to ensure they're eating throughout the day according to that plan. Additionally, when eating grapefruit for days on end, a person's likely to start longing for the foods that they used to be able to eat, and they might begin to think obsessively about their food cravings. If a person is focused on excluding foods, they might begin to develop an unbalanced perspective on foods. Fad diets are unsustainable, both physically and emotionally. Forcing yourself to adhere to strict dietary rules like eating no solid foods for 3 days or working cabbage into every meal can create unnecessary stress. When a person begins to stray from the plan, they might also experience guilt for replacing their ninth bowl of cabbage soup with a double cheeseburger. When stress is involved with each meal and snack, it can lead to repeated negative eating experiences. Associating feelings like guilt and stress with food can negatively impact a person's eating patterns. As these negative experiences pile up, a person's relationship with food will suffer. In the US, the majority of adults are overweight or obese, increasing the risk for type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease. Obesity is a major contributor to preventive death in the US and can raise morbidity risks associated with chronic diseases such as hypertension, stroke, respiratory problems, and various cancers. As discussed, research also shows connections between stress and food. People tend to seek high-calorie, high-fat foods during periods of stress, though in fact, when people are stressed, their bodies store more fat than when they're relaxed. While more factors contribute to the nation's weight challenges, the Stress in America survey suggests that stress influences our eating habits. Many adults report engaging in unhealthy eating behaviors as a result of stress and say that these behaviors can lead to undesirable consequences, such as feeling sluggish or lazy and feeling bad about their bodies. Some of these stats are very staggering. 38% of adults say they have overeaten or eaten unhealthy foods in the past month because of stress. Half of these adults report engaging in these behaviors weekly or more. 33% of adults who report overeating or eating unhealthy foods because of stress say they do so because it helps distract them from stress. 27% of adults say they eat to manage their stress, and 34% of those who report overeating because of stress say this behavior is just a habit. After having overeaten or eating these unhealthy foods, half of those adults report feeling disappointed in themselves, many of them feeling bad about their bodies, and more than a third say they feel sluggish. Clearly, there's a major impact that stress has on our relationship with food. Do you find yourself eating when you're not really hungry? Or do you use food as a source of comfort when you're feeling sad or anxious or even just bored? Although emotional eating has become an all too common problem, many of us don't even realize the extent to which our feelings can impact our eating habits. The occasional binge may seem harmless, but emotional eating can escalate into something more serious and more difficult to control. Find out whether your overeating is the result of a more deep-rooted issue with this emotional eating test. There's some really helpful emotional eating self-tests that you can take online that can give you more insight as to your emotional eating tendencies. There's one through the Mayo Clinic, and I have the website listed here on this slide, and it includes a short 8-question quiz and then a summary of suggestions provided to you. Starting with this questionnaire makes you feel more aware of these tendencies, and it makes it easier to understand what steps can be taken to consistently manage your stress. It's really not that easy to know the difference between physical and emotional hunger. When you have a craving for something sweet and gooey, like a chocolate chip cookie or a cinnamon roll, it can be one of two things. It could either be your stomach's way of gently reminding you that it's time to refuel, or it's a signal that you're bored and need a distraction. So how can you tell? These two hunger pains often feel exactly the same. Here are 4 questions to ask yourself when you need to spot the difference between an emotional tug for comfort and a genuine need for nourishment. The good news is that with some practice, you can become an expert at decoding the meaning behind your cravings. So satisfaction versus relief. Do I want to eat for energy to fuel my body to make it through the day, or am I looking for relief of a sense of safety and security? To test this, place your hand on the part of your body that needs attention. Does it go to your stomach because it's rumbling, or does it go to your brain that feels dull and bored? To fix this, aim to satisfy the part of your body that your hand rests on. If your brain is bored, give it some mentally stimulating material. If your hand traveled to your shoulders, lift and release your shoulders 5 times to relax your muscles. And if it lands on your stomach, mindfully choose a nourishing food. Emotional versus physical hunger. Am I eating in response to physical hunger? Do I have a rumbling stomach, low energy, or am I feeling scared, frustrated, overwhelmed, or even happy? The test for this, ask yourself, how physically hungry am I on a scale from 1 to 10? So 1 is completely ravenous and 10 is you're totally stuffed. If you're 1 through 5, it's likely that you do need something to eat. If you answer 6 through 10, it's likely that food isn't going to help a bit. The fix for this, try eating a mandarin orange. They're a great food to help curb emotional eating and to de-stress. It is easy to peel, and the segments are perfectly portioned to mindfully eat one at a time. The sweet flavor is satisfying, and research has shown that citrus aromas can be calming. Also, a mandarin orange gives a little boost of vitamin C, which is just what we need when we're stressed or emotional. Nutritious or palatable? Am I choosing a nutritious, rich food or sugary, fatty, and salty foods? The test for this, a truly hungry person will eat a large range of foods that will quickly quiet a rumbling stomach. Someone with an emotionally driven craving often only craves a very specific type of food or taste, so not just chocolate, but chocolate with caramel. If only a salty snack will do, it's likely that this is an urge for comfort. The fix for this, it's important to keep good tasting, healthy snacks convenient and handy. Often people keep diet foods around that are bland and don't taste good. So kick up the taste of veggies with hummus, sprinkle some yogurt with nuts, drizzle chocolate on berries, add a dash of spice to your vegetable soup, things like that. Lifelong or transient? Am I building a healthy relationship with foods versus anxiety, guilt, or fear? To test this out, before you eat, ask yourself how you'll likely feel a minute after you finish this bite. If a negative emotion springs to mind, take a pause. Too often we wait until after we eat to check in with the emotional impact of what we consume. To fix this, mindful eating can help you build a healthy and balanced relationship with food. Use the 5 S's of mindful eating no matter what you're eating. Sit down, slowly chew, sense, savor, and smile. So pause before taking another bite. Remember, it's okay to eat the foods you love as long as you do it mindfully. Other items to keep in mind, know the differences between emotional and physical hunger is that emotional hunger comes on suddenly. It hits you in an instant and feels overwhelming and urgent. Physical hunger, on the other hand, comes on more gradually. The urge to eat does not feel dire or demand that instant satisfaction. Emotional hunger craves specific comfort foods. When you're physically hungry, almost anything will sound good, including healthy stuff like vegetables. But emotional hunger craves fatty foods or sugary snacks that provide an instant rush. You feel like you need a cheesecake or pizza and nothing else will solve that problem. Emotional hunger often leads to mindless eating. Before you know it, you've eaten a whole bag of chips or an entire pint of ice cream without really paying attention or actually enjoying it at all. When you're eating in response to physical hunger, you're typically more aware of what you're doing. Emotional eating isn't satisfied once you're full. You keep wanting more and more, often eating until you're uncomfortably stuffed. Physical hunger, on the other hand, doesn't need to be stuffed. You feel satisfied when your stomach is full. Emotional hunger isn't located in the stomach. Rather than growling belly or pain in your stomach, you feel your hunger as a craving you can't get out of your head. You're focused on specific textures, tastes, and smells. Emotional hunger often leads to regret, guilt, or shame. When you eat to satisfy your physical hunger, you're unlikely to feel guilty or shamed because you're simply giving your body what it needs. If you feel guilty after you eat, it's likely because you know deep down that you're not eating for nutritional reasons. So let's find out what are reasons for the so-called emotional eating. Historically and physiologically, we're hardwired to eat when we're stressed. Emotional eating can be defined as eating in response to negative emotions and is directly linked to binge eating. Emotional eating as a way to suppress or soothe negative emotions. Major life events, or more commonly the hassles of daily life, can trigger negative emotions that lead to emotional eating. So what do you think the main cause of emotional eating can include? Yep, you guessed it, it's stress. So do you ever notice how stress makes you hungry? It's not just in your mind. When stress is chronic, it's so often chaotic, fast-paced world, it leads to high levels of that stress hormone we keep talking about, cortisol. Cortisol triggers cravings for salty, sweet, and high-fat foods, foods that give you that burst of energy and pleasure. The more uncontrolled stress in your life, the more likely you are to turn to food for that emotional relief. In other instances, eating can be a way to temporarily silence or stuff down those uncomfortable emotions. This includes anger, fear, sadness, anxiety, loneliness, and shame. This is called stuffing emotions. When you're numbing yourself with food, you can avoid the emotions you just rather not feel. And do you ever just eat to simply give yourself something to do or relieve that boredom or just to fill a void in your life? You feel unfulfilled and empty, and food is the way to occupy that time. In the moment, it fills you up and distracts you from underlying feelings of purposefulness and dissatisfaction with your life. There's also childhood habits. So thinking back to your childhood memories of food, do your parents ever reward good behavior with ice cream, maybe take you out for pizza when you got a good report card, or serve you sweets when you're feeling sad? These emotionally based childhood eating habits often carry over into adulthood. And lastly, our social influences. Getting together with other people for a meal is a great way to relieve stress, but it can also lead to overeating. It's easy to overindulge simply because the food is there or because everyone else is eating. You may also overeat in social situations just out of nervousness, or perhaps your family or circle of friends encourages you to overeat, and it's easier to go along with the group. I'm sure there's a few things up here that you can relate to, and that's completely normal. It's learning how to identify your triggers and fight your cravings. We'll get to that next. Research has shown that 75% of overeating may be linked to emotional eating. So let's talk about a few ways that we can really put the brakes on emotional eating, starting with keeping a food diary. You're able to keep a minimum of a 3-day food diary, so choose 2 weekdays and 1 weekend day to write down the times you eat, what and how much you eat, and how you felt when you were eating. This can be your first step to being more mindful about what you're eating. But it's also going to help us identify the most stressful times of the day or week, which typically leads to the increased emotional eating. Practice mindfulness. Tracking food and beverage intake is really our first step for this, but also there's other ways to practice mindfulness, such as eliminating distractions, might be the TV, or taking the time to actually chew or drink and taste our food. So now we go on to recognizing the feeling of hunger. We've talked a lot about this one. But when we're eating our emotions, it doesn't matter if we're hungry or not. So we really have to understand the difference between the two. So let's think about our stomach as if it's a gas tank, and we're trying to measure how full or how empty it is. Let's assign a number 1 for we're really, really hungry, we're starved, and a 10 for being over full, we're uncomfortable. The goal is to eat when the stomach feels about a 4. You're somewhat hungry, but not starving. So you might find yourself asking this question all day long, and that's okay. We really don't check in enough to our physical hunger, but over time, this hunger self-check will become second nature. Next, you've got to stop the self-sabotaging thoughts. Emotional eating is not helped by persistent negative self-talk, and the judgments we make about our eating, our bodies, our feelings, our expectations of how we should eat, how we should look or behave. And I know we're all guilty of this, but we just have to be more positive with ourselves. And lastly, we're going to build resilience. So developing emotional toughness can really help us resist the urge to binge when times get rough. It will also make it easier for us to deal with the inevitable stress that everyone must face at one time or the next. So some things that we can do to build our resilience. Mind over matter is the name of the game when practicing these skills. When we're in an emotional state, we have a tendency to blow things out of proportion, make them personal, and lose perspective. Then we have an excuse to eat the whole gallon of ice cream. We got to shift out of that negative response by using positive self-talk. Find ways to recharge. Exercise, take a walk with a friend, meditate, finding a change of scenery or taking a mental break, and then getting a good night's sleep also. It's very important. These actions will help build the foundation needed to resist the temptation to emotionally eat. Supporting yourself with healthy habits is another way we can thwart the negative effects of stress. Because physical activity does wonders for your mood and is a powerful stress reducer, make it a priority to move every day. This does not have to be the 30 minutes on the elliptical or a rigid workout regimen. It can be as easy as taking a stroll around your neighborhood. Making it something enjoyable that you're able to weave into your everyday life. Making time for relaxation. Give yourself permission to take at least 30 minutes every day to relax, decompress, and unwind. This is your time to take a break from your responsibilities and recharge your batteries. Although you might feel as though this time is being taken away from other tasks, these 30 minutes to decompress really helps you become more efficient and more focused when you get back to the grind. Try to connect with others. Don't underestimate the importance of close relationships and social activities. Spending time with positive people who enhance your life will help protect you from the negative effects of stress. And prioritize sleep. We mentioned that in the last slide. Ever notice how when you're short on sleep, you crave foods that give you a quick energy boost? Well, there's a reason for that. Lack of sleep has a direct link to stress, overeating, and weight gain. Keeping a regular sleep schedule, even on the weekends, maintains the timing of the body's internal clock and can help you fall asleep and wake up more easily. It also helps to keep your body's hormones more consistent. There are two hormones in your body that regulate normal feelings of hunger and fullness. Ghrelin stimulates appetite, while leptin sends signals to the brain when you are full. However, when you don't get sleep, your ghrelin levels go up, stimulating your appetite, so you want more food than normal. And your leptin levels go down, meaning you don't feel satisfied and want to keep eating. So the more sleep you skip, the more food your body will crave. It's a cycle. As well as making it harder to fight food cravings. Feeling tired can also increase your stress levels, leading to yet more emotional eating. To control your appetite and reduce your food cravings, try to get plenty of rest, about 8 hours of quality sleep every single night. And lastly, incorporating a balanced, healthy, nutritional eating plan is a vital component when preventing or reducing stress in the body. Before we talk in more detail about eating well to combat stress, let's chat a little bit more about the importance of sleep and its relationship with food cravings. Not exactly a secret that a poor night's sleep often gives birth to intense hunger cravings the following day, and we find ourselves reaching for sugary, carb-heavy foods. In a nutshell, it comes down to how sleep deprivation influences our hormones. So we talked in depth about those two hormones, ghrelin, which grows your appetite, and leptin lowers your appetite. So when you don't get good quality sleep, those hormones are out of whack. So what foods do you crave when you're overtired? If chocolate, chips, red meat, mac and cheese, pizza, if those came to mind, you're definitely not alone. You want something that's really going to satisfy the hunger cravings, and high-calorie, carb-heavy meals really tick all of those boxes here. And as I mentioned earlier, a big reason why you're actively seeking high-calorie foods is because your levels of ghrelin are likely elevated. However, Carbs also satisfy another of your body's needs, the need for fuel. This is because carbs often act as your body's primary source of fuel. It's why athletes often carb load before participating in an event, and if your energy levels are low, your body is instinctively going to want carb-rich foods, presuming that these will perk your energy levels right back up. However, just as with sugar, carbs can also be a real problem for your sleep pattern as they're broken down into glucose, which can impact your glucose levels. In fact, studies have shown that a high consumption of carbs is often associated with less time spent in deep sleep, which in turn induce symptoms of sleep deprivation, forming this vicious cycle. Speaking of time spending sleeping, how much time do you regularly get each night? Between 7 and 9 each night is recommended, and as we mentioned, the types of food we consume has a direct impact on our quality of sleep. Good sleep habits, sometimes referred to as sleep hygiene, can help you get a good night's sleep. Some habits that can improve your sleep health: be consistent, go to bed at the same time each night and get up at the same time each morning, including the weekends. Make sure your bedroom is quiet, dark, relaxing, and at a comfortable temperature. Remove electronic devices such as TVs, computers, and smartphones from the bedroom. And avoid large meals or caffeine and alcohol before bedtime. Getting some exercise also, being physically active during the day, can really help you fall asleep more easily at night. Eating a balanced and healthy diet is key to helping our bodies manage the physiological changes caused by stress. Adrenal function is significantly influenced by blood sugar levels, therefore much of the dietary advice below aims to stabilize blood sugar. Do not skip meals. Ensure that you eat regularly, taking healthy snacks as necessary. Small regular meals will help to maintain energy levels and mood while decreasing tiredness and irritability. Choose whole, natural foods and ensure a minimum of 5 portions of non-starchy veggies per day. Eating the rainbow. Prioritize protein. When chronically stressed, the body has an increased demand for protein. Protein requirements are estimated at 0.7 to 1.8 grams per kilogram of body weight, and this is per day. Choose lean meat, chicken, fish, eggs, beans and lentils, nuts and seeds in each of your meals. Protein helps to slow that release of sugar into the bloodstream. And drink more water. I know this one sounds simple, but a lot of us are not drinking enough water. Take your body weight in pounds and divide that number by 2. And so that's the number of ounces you should really aim for each day. If you're not a fan of plain water, try infusing it with various fruits, mint, or even basil. Avoid highly refined foods such as white bread, pasta, chocolate, or sweets or foods with added sugars. And replace these processed foods with unrefined foods such as brown bread, rice, oats, and rye. I know this is the moment that everyone's been waiting for. We are going to talk about the key nutrients to look for that really support the adrenal glands. So we're going to start with magnesium. Magnesium is dramatically depleted during times of stress, and symptoms of deficiency include anxiety, fatigue, insomnia, and predisposition to stress. Include plenty of dark leafy greens, whole grains, nuts, and seeds to supply adequate levels of magnesium. B vitamins can help to support the adrenal function, particularly B5, which directly supports the adrenal cortex and hormone production. Sources of this include whole grains, nuts, and seeds. So now you're probably seeing a pattern here. We're talking a lot about whole grains, nuts, and seeds. Foods high in omega-3 fatty acids, such as salmon and other types of fish. Fish can boost those serotonin levels and limit the production of anxiety hormones, such as adrenaline and cortisol. And vitamin C, found in most fresh fruits and veggies. I know we talked about it during that exercise that used the mandarin orange. Vitamin C is stored in the adrenal gland and is required to make cortisol. It can also curb levels of stress hormones while strengthening the immune system. So we really can't get enough of our vitamin C. Sometimes it's the actual mechanics behind eating that can help to ward off tension. So try reaching for some crunchy raw veggies such as celery or carrot sticks. All that chewing can help us redirect our focus and help melt that stress away. Another tip is to have a small snack before bedtime. Although those heavy meals before bedtime can trigger heartburn, having a few carbs can speed the release of the brain chemical serotonin and help you sleep better. So some examples of small snacks before bedtime may include a small bowl of whole grains cereal, making sure it's low in sugar, of course, a banana, maybe string cheese, non-fat yogurt, or maybe an apple with a spoonful of peanut butter or almond butter. Milk and other dairy products provide protein and calcium, and research shows that calcium eases anxiety and mood swings. So I typically recommend skim or low-fat milk. And lastly, decaffeinated tea has a calming effect and reduces stress-related insomnia or anxiety, which could be very helpful. I really wanted to summarize all the mindful eating tricks that we already discussed, but just to quickly summarize it, we mentioned eating slower. This will really help you to be more in tune with what you're eating, what the flavors taste like. Just take a little bit more time to actually chew your food, and this allows you to digest it easier, but it also allows you to really feel those flavors and taste those flavors in your mouth. Favor the silence. Silencing your phone, shut off the TV, all of those screens or just distractions that might take the focus away from what you're eating. I know it's difficult to do, but if you get into the habit, even if it's just for a couple minutes, it's really going to help you focus on what you're eating and just being more in tune with that whole process. Paying attention to flavor, I think without those distractions, it's inevitable. You're going to be able to taste your food more. You're going to maybe taste what actually went into the meal, what flavors you enjoy. And lastly, know your food. So understanding where your food came from, how it was harvested, maybe it was a CSA box that you got your food. It just really helps you appreciate what you're eating and finds your shopping habits will probably change in that whole process too. A lot of nutrition advice centers on which foods to eat or which to limit, but learning how to eat can be just as important as learning which foods to eat. Mindful eating is just one mealtime skill that can fit in with any healthy eating style, and this practice involves applying simple mindfulness techniques to the process of eating. And in a basic sense, mindful eating means just eating slowly while noticing all those different sensory aspects that we talked about, the taste, the texture, the aroma. Research has shown that eating mindfully may help you to eat smaller portions and fewer calories and reduce emotional eating. Practicing this mindful eating technique can also help transition from a good versus bad relationship with food to just an all foods fit mentality. So just a more healthier relationship that you have with food. And I just wanted to put this checklist on the screen. I think it's really helpful. You can use this at any time that you're eating, just to remind you to pause between bites, taking your time, being more aware of those flavors and textures, taking deep breaths between each bite. And while you're chewing, it just helps to slow the process and for you to enjoy the actual moment instead of being distracted. And again, along the same lines of not being distracted, try not to have screens in front of you while you're eating. There's also different checklists here that you can use to help yourself identify different textures of the meal and different flavors of the meal. So try using this checklist, and I think it'll be very helpful in being a little bit more mindful when you're eating. And before we conclude this presentation, I just want to take a moment to practice a short body scan. Checking in with our bodies helps to settle the mind and to notice what physiological sensations and emotions might be present. So let's begin by taking a moment to allow your body to settle into a comfortable position. You may close your eyes or keep them slightly open. Begin by taking a full breath in and a long breath out. Now bring awareness to the top of your body, your head, your face, your neck, your shoulders. Notice any sensations or movements, any places of holding. Now moving down to the arms and the hands, sensing the back of the body, the front of the body, sensing yourself seated. Feeling the contact of your body with the chair or the cushion. And now sensing your upper legs, your lower legs, and the feet. Notice if there are any particular places that call out for attention. Places where sensations feel the most vibrant or dynamic. Scanning to see if there are places where there's a lack of sensation, or only very faint sensations. And now sensing the whole body breathing. Finishing with a full deep breath in and a long breath out. Great job. You may open your eyes once again. I hope you're able to reflect on what your stressors are and how you can start to recognize signs of stress to help control it and mitigate those effects. We discuss what stress actually is and the short and long-term effects of it. Some acute stress can be beneficial, but the persistent stress is what we're worried about. We chatted about emotional eating and how to recognize signs if we use food as a source of comfort when you're feeling sad or bored. And lastly, we looked into various types of foods and nutrients that can actually work to tame our stress and how we can apply simple mindfulness techniques to the process of eating. I hope you learned a lot today and can start to implement some of these stress relieving techniques and recommendations to mitigate the various stressors we're faced with each day. Thank you, everyone, and stay well.